Okay, 8th grade. So today we're going to keep working on word meanings, so the connotative language, figurative language, and technical language. First, we're just going to do this guided practice together. It says independent practice, but we're going to do it together. 45 through 47. And then for homework, you guys are going to do, looks like, 48 through 51. So I'm going to read through this story. It just says read the scientific account, then answer the questions that follow. We know we're probably going to see some technical language in here because we know it's a scientific account. So it says Animal Regeneration by Alea Brown. Regeneration is the ability of an organism to regrow a lost body part. All creatures have the power to regenerate lost body parts to some degree. If a human scrapes a knee or breaks a bone, for example, tissue is regenerated to heal the wound. Even a lost fingernail will regenerate over time. If the finger is severed, however, the limits of regeneration have been reached. Humans cannot regrow limbs or organs. In contrast, if an earthworm is cut in half, the end of the worm with the head can grow a new tail. If the end of the worm with the tail survives, it too may grow a new tail. Unfortunately, it starves to death eventually because it cannot feed itself without a head or mouth. Which creatures have strong regenerative powers? Lower animals such as worms, lizards, spiders, and starfish have some of the greatest regenerative powers. Crayfish, for example, have a remarkable safety device at the base of each claw and leg called a breaking joint. When a predator grabs a limb or claw, the appendage breaks away so the crayfish can escape. Over time, as the crayfish molts or sheds its soft shell, the broken limb or pincer grows larger and larger until it has been completely regenerated. Some animals are able to survive in large part because of their regenerative powers. A type of flatworm called planaria lives under rocks in clear creeks and streams. The flatworm has no real defense mechanisms to protect it from predators, but it can be cut into as many as 32 pieces, and each piece may form a new worm, complete with a head, eyes, and internal organs. In the case of the planaria, an event that could be fatal is turned into an awesome act of procreation. Many more animals display noteworthy regenerative powers. Sharks replace lost teeth throughout their lifetimes. A single shark may grow as many as 24,000 teeth in its lifetime, ensuring a long career at the top of the food chain. Much like planaria, sea cucumbers, which have bodies that grow up to 3 feet long, can be cut into pieces and survive. Each piece may grow into a new sea cucumber. Spiders, like crayfish, can regrow legs. Many lizards also have breakaway tails that snap off when caught by predators. They then grow new ones, which lack the original spine. Starfish can lose arms and grow new ones. Sometimes an entirely new starfish can grow from a single lost arm. Interestingly enough, the scales of a fish tell stories about regeneration. Much like the rings inside of a tree trunk, fish scales reveal details about an organism's past. Each scale lies in a pocket of skin and grows along with the fish. Scientists read the markings on a scale to determine the age of the fish, seasons of famine or drought, and other important information. It is often necessary to look at many scales to get a complete story, however, because scales are often lost and regenerated. These new scales lack the markings that happen over time. They're like a blank page in the history of the fish. Scientists are extremely interested in regeneration because of the possible implications for healing humans. Some scientists think it is possible that higher animals retain the ability to regenerate body parts, but that the reaction triggering the body to regenerate has been lost. By studying lower animals such as worms, spiders, and sponges, scientists hope to discover what triggers regeneration. The dream is that this knowledge could one day be used to help humans regrow internal organs and limbs. Currently, human regeneration may sound like something out of a science fiction movie. The implications of such a discovery, however, would be so far-reaching that they are hard to fathom. For now, the miracle of regeneration is intriguing enough to keep scientists working for years to come. So now we're going to answer the questions. You don't have to put them on the answer form. As always, you can just circle them. So it says, what is the meaning of procreation as it is used in paragraph 3 of the packet? So it says survival, repetition, cooperation, or reproduction. So if we go back and look at paragraph 3, that's going to be back on page 45. We're looking for the definition of procreation. So we need to be using context clues to find the definition of this, which we discussed back earlier in the packet. So it says, some animals are able to survive in large part because of their regenerative powers. Now we know the regenerative means that it can grow back a part of its body in some way. So that's important to keep in mind. A type of flatworm called planaria lives under rocks in clear creeks and streams. The flatworm has no real defense mechanisms to protect it from predators, but it can be cut into as many as 32 pieces, that in each piece may form to create a new worm, complete with a head, eyes, and internal organs. In the place of planaria, an event that could be fatal is turned into an awesome act of procreation. So I think we can use context clues both from sentences surrounding that sentence as well as root words from Greek and Latin origins. So if we look at the sentences around it, we don't really get an idea of what the word means in that sentence. It just says, in the case of planaria, an event that could be fatal is turned into an awesome act of procreation. So we know that it has nothing to do with dying. Maybe instead it's the opposite of dying, right? So like living in some way. Now if we look at the sentence before that, it says it can be cut into as many as 32 pieces and each piece may form a new worm. Well, that is important in understanding what procreation means. Now if we think about our Greek and Latin root words, if we look at the root words and prefixes and suffixes in our word here, we know that we see procreation. Well, pro, if you look up those root words, would mean, or that prefix would mean to like move forward. And we obviously know that we see the creation right there. And we know that creating is like making something new. Well, if we go back to our last sentence that we read before, it may form a new worm. So we know it has something to do with like moving forward with life, making a new life, something along those lines. So if we look at our options, we see survival. Well, in some ways, I don't think we can eliminate that answer yet, because in some ways, procreating and creating a new life does have to do with survival, but does it really mean survival? Is that our best answer? We don't really know yet. So, repetition. Does this really have anything to do with repeating? No. So we can eliminate that as a possible answer. Cooperation. That just means it's working alongside something else, right? Does this have anything to do with cooperation? No. So we can eliminate that answer. Now we have reproduction. Even if you don't know what reproduction means, we can use those prefixes, suffixes, and root words to kind of understand this. So we know re means again. We talked about that as an example when we talked about Greek and Latin word parts. So re means again, and what does it mean when you produce something? You're creating something, right? And we talked all about how that word procreation is all about creating something new. So we know that D, reproduction, is our best answer for number 1. So let's move on to number 2. It says, read this sentence from the passage. Crayfish, for example, have a remarkable safety device at the base of each claw and leg called a breaking joint. Which of the following best matches the author's connotative meaning of the word remarkable as used in the sentence? So, what does connotative mean? Again, when we're talking about a connotative meaning of the word, what does that mean? Connotative is talking about whether the word has a negative stigma or a positive stigma. Is the word usually associated with positive views or negative views? That's what you're looking at with connotative meanings of words. So if I said something is remarkable, am I saying it's unusual? No, because unusual has more of a negative connotation. I think we can all agree that remarkable has more of a positive connotation. If something's remarkable, then it's good in some way. So we have significant. Okay, I think significant is a good option Now, again, we're looking for the best match, so we want to keep on looking. So C says extraordinary. Okay, I think we should keep that one in the running, and then we'll break it down when we have our final two. And then we have noticeable. Well, it doesn't really have anything to do with being noticed above anything else, right? Even though if something is remarkable, it might be noticeable, but that's not really the overall meaning of the word. So when it comes down to significant and extraordinary, this can make things kind of a little bit difficult because I think those words mean similar things. But in terms of when they say they have a remarkable safety device at the base of each claw and leg called a breaking joint. Well, when we think of something being extraordinary, we think of something being different than a lot of other people's, right? When something's extraordinary, it's something that that person has that not everybody has, or something that is a rare or not unusual necessarily, but something that's really cool when it happens, right? So significant would mean that it's just important to what's happening. So I think here when they're saying remarkable, they're saying it's like this amazing thing that they have that's unusual and is specific to this specific type of creature. So for number 2, extraordinary is the connotative meaning of the word remarkable. So if we move on to number 3, it says, as used in paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 of the passage, the word powers is closest in meaning to. So we have the word powers. What is the meaning of the word powers in paragraphs 2, 3, and 4? So the possible meanings they give us is influence, authority, forcefulness, and ability. So first, let's go back to paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. And we'll read paragraph 2 because they use that word several times. So it says, which creatures have strong regenerative powers? Lower animals such as worms, lizards, spiders, and starfish have some of the greatest regenerative powers. Crayfish, for example, have a remarkable safety device at the base of each claw and leg called a breaking joint. So if we move down to 3, they're saying pretty much the same things in 2, 3, or 4. It's saying some animals are able to survive in large part because of their regenerative powers, and many more animals display noteworthy regenerative powers. So they're talking about the animal's ability to grow these new limbs or to heal themselves, that sort of thing. That kind of gives us the answer here, but we'll still go through this together. Is it talking about when you say that a celebrity has power, what are they having the power to do? To influence people, like we see in A. Is that what it's saying with these regenerative powers? That they have a powerful influence on someone? No. So we can immediately eliminate A as an answer, because that's not what power means in this specific passage. Now, authority. Authority has to do with, like, who's in charge, right? Who has power to be in charge. Like, in government, those people have power to be in charge and to have authority over what's happening in the world. Now, is that what we're seeing in this passage? Do these animals have authoritative powers? No. So we can immediately eliminate B as an answer as well. Now, the last 2 we see here are forcefulness and abilities. We kind of said the answer when we were discussing the meaning of the word in general, but are these animals forcing anything on anyone else by healing themselves? No. They're showing their ability to heal themselves. They have the power to heal themselves, or the ability to heal themselves. So that is the meaning of power in paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. So 4 says, which of the phrases from the passage best helps the reader understand the meaning of the word appendage? So, appendage, we don't know what that means. That would be some technical language. So, the options they give us are appendage means have a remarkable safety device, grabs a limb or claw, sheds its soft shell, or grows larger and larger? Well, first I think we need to go back and find appendage in the passage. So we see the word appendage in paragraph 2. It says, when a predator grabs a limb or claw, the appendage breaks away so the crayfish can escape. So a predator is grabbing the crayfish's limb or claw, and that limb or claw breaks away so that the crayfish can escape. So we don't have to do much eliminating of answers here. We can just immediately say that this phrase, grabs a limb or claw, helps us to understand what an appendage is, because the appendage is the limb or claw, because the limb or claw is grabbed and then that appendage falls away. So 5 says, read this sentence from the passage. The dream is that this knowledge could one day be used to help humans regrow internal organs and limbs. Which word best matches the meaning of dream as used in this sentence? So we see hope, fantasy, plan, or illusion. Well, if we look at hope, I think that's a good option we should keep in mind, because you could replace that word dream. You could say the hope is that this knowledge could one day be used to help regrow internal organs and limbs. That's a good answer for that, but let's look and make sure that that is the best answer. Now, what about fantasy? Well, fantasy would be something you kind of are dreaming about, but that it's not an obtainable thing, right? And here they're thinking it's possibly more of an attainable thing, that if they learn more about it, that it's something that they could eventually succeed in doing. So we're going to X out fantasy as a possible answer. Now, plan. You could put in, the plan is that this knowledge could one day be used to help regrow internal organs and limbs. Well, I think right now that that's a good possible answer that will compare to A. But let's take a look at D. It says illusion. Illusion is kind of, well, you think of magic tricks when we think of the word illusion, right? It's something kind of imaginary. So here we're not really talking about anything imaginary. We're talking about real things that take place within animals that could possibly be used when we're dealing with human medical care, right? So I think we can eliminate illusion as our answer. But if we look at hope and plan. Hope is saying it's something that's possible. It could possibly, at some point in time, help us to advance human regrowth of organs and limbs. Right? We're hoping that it can happen, but we're not totally sure, but we're working on it, right? If we say plan, a plan is like guaranteed, right? They're planning that this is going to happen, and they know it's going to happen, but we don't really know that it's going to happen, right? So I think out of these two, while plan seems like a good answer, I think hope is our better answer, because we can't guarantee that it's going to happen, but they're hoping that it will happen. So now we have 48 through 51. There's this passage called The Glowing Beagle. It's going to ask you some questions, I believe, about a lot of the things we've covered so far. So the questions start on 49 and they go through 51. So it asks you about the central idea, which we talked about at the beginning of this packet. So if you need to, you can refer back to those beginning videos and those beginning packet pages. Hopefully you did those, because you can use them to help you. And then part B has to do with part A. So if you can figure out part A, part B should be pretty easy. This one asks you to look at what relationships the sentence has with the rest of the paragraph that we've talked about in class several times before. If you have any questions on any of these, as always, you can ask me during office hours. A lot of these are concepts that we've covered in the past, so this should not be too difficult. So if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to me during office hours. But for today, you guys need to complete 48 through 51. And then if you, again, have any questions, reach out to me during office hours.